Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be comparing the John Deere Z530M to the Toro Titan models. And just real quick, let me break down these prices. You can get into a Z500 model for the low 5,000s, starting at $51.99. You can get a Z15E, and it comes with the engine of Briggs & Stratton engine, 24 horsepower, and you get 3 deck options, which will affect the price on that 54 and 60-inch deck. But the Z530M and the Z530R are both closer to the $6,000 price range, and they both come with a 24 horsepower Kawasaki engine and have these 3 deck sizes. Now, Toro oftentimes has many different options within the same size of mower, so we're going to keep this with just the Titan model. So we're going to go with a 48-inch deck, and that's model number 76401, and that gets you a 23 horsepower Kawasaki engine right at the $6,000 price point. For an additional $100, you get a 54-inch deck on model number 76501, but you only get the option of the 26 horsepower Kohler motor, and that's at $6,099. And for an additional $100 for the 60-inch deck, we have 2 different options. We have the Kohler with model number 76604, but if you prefer that Kawasaki engine, model number 76605 will get you that 24 horsepower Kawasaki for $61.99 on both of those. And before we get started on comparing this John Deere to these Toro Titans, I just want to thank all my new subscribers. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. And for those of you that don't know, I work on these mowers, commercial mowers, and actually John Deere and Toro are probably the 2 mowers that I work on the most. I've got lots of videos on this, so if you haven't subscribed already and check out my other videos, check them out. Got lots of helpful videos. So let's get started with this review. I hope this video helps you guys, because I do see a lot of common things amongst these brands, so I just want you guys to be aware of it. So let's get started. And by the way, this is not sponsored by Lowe's or John Deere or Toro or anyone, but guys, I would appreciate it if you did use my links to buy one of these mowers. If you do buy one of these mowers, either John Deere or Toro, it won't cost you a dime, but it will help the store like Lowe's would pay me a small commission, and that'll help me bring you more videos like this. So thank you for doing that. All right, first up, let's take a look at this John Deere. And this unit that we're going to specifically be looking at has a 60-inch deck, and that's why it's $62.99. Now, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to lift up this parking brake, which, by the way, the Toro's has a parking brake when you put those handles out, but I actually prefer the handle like this on the John Deere. But easy access to the top of the deck, that's important for changing the belt, keeping this deck clean, but I don't like these stamped decks for that very reason right there. Holds water, which is going to expedite corrosion and hold dirt and sand. You don't want that. You want a fabricated deck like on the Toro. They're both 10 gauge. This has that drop pin 18 position. The Toro only has, I believe, 15 positions. But here's what I want you to notice, how thin and small that frame is. We're going to compare that to the Toro later on. But again, this 10 gauge deck, we do have some welding reinforcement around that bottom edge. But again, it's a stamped deck. And these spindles are aluminum casing with this little flimsy plastic flip up cover housing there, so you can grease those spindles. These units do have a nice roll bar. I do like that. That does not come on the Toro. And again, guys, I give you this unbiased opinion. This engine is a Kawasaki, even though it's just branded John Deere, it's Kawasaki. I wish this guard came up higher to give protection to that carburetor. I see it all the time on commercial units where guys back into something and mess up that carburetor, mess up the engine. I wish that guard was a little higher on that. But right here, here's a scheduled maintenance chart underneath the seat. And this looks really nice. You know, you think this is pretty nice having that battery tucked away in there. But the bad part about that is that it attracts mice and rodents during winter storage. They like to get in there and chew on wires. That's kind of the drawback to that plastic. Other than that, I really do like how they tuck that battery away in there, nice and organized and tight. There's our transmission reservoirs. These are not serviceable transmissions. These are not serviceable transmissions. You can change the oil on them, but they don't have filters. And speaking of transmissions, these are the Tough Torque TZT7U transmissions with 1-inch shafts. These are rated for basically 5 acres. 5 acres, large residential properties. There's a look at them there. PTO clutch right there. Nice unit. Smaller tires, rear tires than the these are 22 9.5 10s on this unit. The front tires are the same on both the John Deere and the Toro. But again, here's that 10 gauge stamped deck. The Toro has a fabricated deck. A fabricated deck is stronger than a stamped deck. Not saying the stamped deck isn't good enough. As long as you just want a fabricated deck is stronger. I like the instrument panel better on the John Deere. Like that separate choke cable for the Kawasaki versus like on the Briggs & Stratton. Sometimes they have a single cable for the choke and throttle. So there's that Kawasaki engine. Very reliable. Most of the commercial grade John Deere mowers use a Kawasaki or a Kohler engine. Nice roll bar. I do love this roll bar, and there's other positions you can put it in. Nice seat with the armrest here. The John Deeres are nice. They're very nice. I'll put that seat back down, so we left it as we found it. Next up, we're going to take a look at these Toro Titans, and this is a 54-inch deck priced at $6,099. The model number 76501. This particular unit has a Kohler engine, which is only available with the Kohler engine in this 54-inch deck. But one thing that stands out, if it hasn't already, is this frame. Look at how massive this frame is compared to that John Deere. This thing weighs more than the John Deere, about 45 pounds, I believe, and I believe it's all in metal. There's that Kohler engine, 26 horsepower. These are pretty decent engines. They get kind of a bad rap, and they do make it easy to change the oil. And this is much better than that common little plastic valve that you'll find on some of the Kawasaki's. Coming over here to the left side, one thing you'll notice is that guard, how much higher it comes off up on that engine, protecting the engine. And these big, massive tires, larger tires than the John Deere. These are 22 by 11 Voodoo tires. The grip does look very aggressive, but it doesn't tear up the grass like you would think. There's the 76501 code, and there's a QR code you can, on that tag, you can go there and look up parts for these mowers, which is very important. That's another thing to consider, is getting the parts, and I will say it's equally as easy on both the Toro and the John Deere of finding parts. Your local dealership, you can order them online, but man, look at that frame. That just, compared to the John Deere, this is a tank compared to the John Deere. Just massive, massive frame compared. And we have the fabricated deck. It is an 11 gauge deck, just like the John Deere, but it is fabricated. And you have easy access to the top of it right here. Big, thick belt right there. And I will say these spindles on the Toros are better than the John Deere. That's just my personal opinion. I will say that these are sealed bearings. You don't have to grease them. And I will say they last longer in my experience. That's just anecdotal evidence there. The chute is nice and rubbery. It folds around when you hit something like a fence post or something. Very nice. I like that. Then the hard, stiff plastic on those chutes. Very nice. And again, see how high that guard comes up to protect that engine? And this one is a Kawasaki. This is the 48-inch deck model, and it has the 24 horsepower Kawasaki. And like I said before, now's a good time to mention these hydros. It's the Hydro Gear serviceable ZT2800 transmissions, and these are estate rated transmissions on these units. And so they are heavier duty transmissions versus the John Deere. The only downside there's on that fuel gauge there, the John Deere does have a nice digital fuel gauge. But I do like the frame build better. The transmissions that have changed, you can change the oil filter. You can find parts and rebuild this transmission. You can't find parts for that other one on the John Deere, not on the John Deere website. How you could do it, I don't know. Nice thick grip there for your foot if you do use the deck to mount on the mower. But honestly, I would avoid ever stepping on the deck. Just enter from the front if you can. So again, guys, you can get both of these at Lowe's. You can get the Toro also at Ace. But one thing I want to mention is those transmissions. The transmission on the Toro costs $1,300. And I do love how on their website you can find their parts. It's all really easy. Like once you go to their find your mower, you go to parts and manuals, put in your mower, and then it'll have all these types of breakdowns. Let me show you. So you'll need to know your serial number. So let's say it's that one. So there it pops up, and then you just click down here to parts, and you have all these assembly drawings. So I don't know why my camera won't focus here, but you have tons of assembly drawings, and this will help you put stuff back together, find missing parts and things like that. But also when you go to John Deere, you can go to parts and service, and I always just go to parts and then commercial mowing, and it'll pull up everything. And so then just scroll down, and if you typed in, let's type in Z530M. And so then it's going to pop up, and you can click view diagrams. And once you do that, you'll have to have a dealer set and everything, and that is not my dealer, by the way. It's just a random one they selected down here in Florida. But you have all these different categories. You can go down here to powertrain, transaxle. I was wrong earlier. Some of these transmissions you can't get parts for. This one you actually can on the John Deere. So if I mentioned that earlier, that was a mistake. But it has all these different sections, like you got the transaxle center case and valves, so you can rebuild this if you needed to. And there's all your parts and prices and things. And actually the John Deere came out having cheaper prices for all the common things like deck belt and spindles and things. Actually the John Deere had a little bit cheaper prices. The transmission for the John Deere is only $1,037 and 36 for left side or right side. So with all my notes and everything, I just wanted to go ahead and jot them down side by side, and let's talk about the things that matter. One, the price, obviously, your budget. And everybody focuses on that engine, but it's not, they're the same engines amongst all these brands. Kohler's good, Kawasaki's great, Briggs & Stratton's okay, got a bad rap. But anyway, we're talking about the Kawasaki's on these. So let's just call that a wash, the price and the Kawasaki's, but then let's start keeping score as we move on down to what's important. And what's important is the deck, the transmission, and that frame build quality. All right, those are the expensive repairs. Yeah, the engine, but you just need to maintain it, don't abuse it, all this stuff. So let's talk about what matters here. The deck on the John Deere, you got a 10 gauge stamped. Toro, you got the 10 gauge fabricated deck. So there's 1 point
For the Toro, and then the transmission, you got the large residential transmission. It's a compact unit. The Toro has a heavier duty transmission for bigger jobs. So there's another point. Frame build quality, like the deck linkages, but mostly that front end frame, where I've done a lot of repairs on like commercial John Deeres. It's very common. Those frames really matter. They take a beating in that front especially. Toro by far wins that one. And then we have a fuel tank, just a half a gallon larger, enough to give a point to Toro. And the rear tires are larger on the Toro. Not a deal breaker on the tires. I wouldn't care about that. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to even give a point to either one. But on that warranty, 4-year, an extra year. So 4-year, 300-hour warranty on the John Deere. Toro, we got 3-year, 300-hour. Extra points. John Deere has that roll bar, cheaper parts, and the electronic fuel gauge. It's really nice. But Toro's got better engine protection and better spindles. So, and $100 cheaper. Now this is comparing the Z530M with the 60-inch deck and with that Toro Titan model number 76605. So if you factor in that $100 less in price plus the wider tires, I think that constitutes for an extra point, giving Toro the clear win. So guys, what do you think? Which one would you get? Would you pick the Toro or the John Deere? Do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, check out my other videos. I appreciate you guys watching. If you are going to buy one of these mowers, please use the viewed product links down below.